Success in understanding profound content can make people awaken to clarify many things that ordinary people often wonder about. Simple arguments, but they need a lifetime to practice. Too many truths that you have never understood clearly. Only through experience can you deeply feel them. A class of people can control another class because they hold secret thoughts and rules of the game that the rest have never known. The law of good and evil is just a bridge between the two sides. Order is something created by the strong, and the weak must follow. This video takes more than an hour to watch, but it takes a whole day to absorb and a lifetime to feel and understand. It can change your life forever. This content is very challenging to think about, so take the time to listen seriously. I know your life is very busy, but what I say is not easy to absorb, especially difficult to grasp if you only listen to it once. My advice is to watch it to the end and listen to it over and over again. When you are free or working at home, please share and save the playlist for your convenience. I am sure within a few short months, your thinking will develop to a new level. Ancient wisdom. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. From childhood to adulthood, no one told you what a human is, what human nature is. You have the most contact with humans, but are also the most unfamiliar with humans. From ancient times to the present, humanism has always been the esoteric subject of kings and nobles. It has never been widely spread. Humanism is a system of thought that has been sealed for a long time and deliberately hidden. It is the secret to survival that successful people never reveal to you. It is kept for themselves and passed on to their children and grandchildren. Why are you hurt by others? Being deceived. Why are you trapped in love? Being taken advantage of. Why do you have difficulty in life? Making money difficult. Why are you betrayed? Being deceived. All of these are often due to your lack of understanding of humanity. This is not an exaggeration. And right after this, I will explain each thing to you. What a human is, a herd animal wearing the cloak of civilization. All easily get lost and get caught up in the general trends of society. Do you know why priests in the West are called shepherds? They are the ones who guide and shepherd the lost sheep in any era. There are always two systems of knowledge, external knowledge and internal knowledge. External knowledge teaches you how to be a good sheep, while internal knowledge is the strategies and tactics of humanity reserved only for kings and the rich. They keep internal knowledge for themselves and their descendants, never to be made public, while external knowledge is beautifully decorated to spread to the masses to make them listen and obey. History changes, but one thing never changes. Humans are always exploited. If there were no sheep, what would the wolves eat? If there were no poor people, what would the rich eat? The rich would teach their children about humanity and strategy, while the poor would only send their children to skill classes. Your child can dance, good at dancing, but in the end, just to entertain the rich. No matter how high your child's score is, just a screw of the business. Dedicating day and night to the rich, no matter how your child learns different skills. Their way of making money when they grow up is like a prostitute serving customers more and more. Only serving customers can make money. As long as you don't serve customers, there is no money. The rich understand who they are. They are mommy. They control a large number of prostitutes. Take everything from coup to make profit for themselves. They have money whether there are customers or not. While you and your child become sheep of the rich, since ancient times, the West has had an immutable law. Intellectual workers will rule. Manual workers will be ruled. This world is not a world of cunning people nor a world of powerful people, but a world of people who understand humanity. Money and power will change, but humanity is something that has never changed from ancient times to the present. If until now you still use vague perception and unclear experience to deal with human behavior, if you have not achieved anything, yet if your life is stuck and you cannot move forward, if you want to escape the fate of being controlled by others, and stuck at the bottom of the food chain, then do not take your eyes off here. The truth about humanity will be revealed to you, and the strategy of humanity will be solved. You will completely see the tricks of the bad people and the hypocrites in this world, and we will teach you how to deal with them because we will help you uncover the traps behind the so-called morality. You will understand how to make your child or yourself become a wolf. standing at the top of the food chain, because we will decode the tricks that many people are controlled by. The secrets that the rulers never reveal are about to be held by you. How your perception of human nature is formed when you are born. You are like a pure white paper with no thoughts, no concepts, no awareness, and no value judgments from birth, until you learn language and begin to perceive the world. There is a long period of time in which the people you meet will be different, and your life will also change. The people you meet include, but are not limited to, your parents, teachers, neighbors, friends, public opinion, concepts from books, customs, movies, television, and so on. It is the people you meet who write different angers on that pristine white paper, that speak in a scary way. Your thoughts are not your own, but thoughts planted by the people around you. Since you were young, biological genes are due to movement, while thought genes are due to being planted by husbands. Remember when you were young. How did your teacher teach you to recognize the word human? The teacher would write the word human on the board, then ask you to read it over and over again, and go home to copy it 10 times. No matter how many years have passed, as long as someone writes the word human, you will not hesitate to read that word correctly. Now imagine if the teacher at that time wrote the word ghost instead of human. What would happen when you read up to here? Do you feel a little startled? The endless repetition is the way you receive ideas from people around you, and gradually they are ingrained in your brain. You become similar to the people around you who have the same way of thinking and acting, and that silently shapes your thoughts and personality. Eventually, it leads to your value judgment about everything in life, for sure. If you read human words as ghost words, it will not cause direct harm. But if from the beginning you have been implanted with wrong thoughts, those wrong thoughts will become the map guiding your life. Just imagine what will happen when you use a wrong map to orient your life. It is scary. In nature, from the time you start going to school, everyone is influenced and brainwashed. You are a copy of the people around you and a copy of the collective. Philosopher Thomas Aquinas has a famous saying, "Pay attention to your thoughts because they will become your words. Pay attention to your words because they will become your actions. Pay attention to your actions because they will become your habits. Pay attention to your habits because they will become your character. Pay attention to your character because they will eventually become your destiny." In short, your thoughts will determine your destiny. This is the terrible power of the gene of ideology. The concept is class-based, and the gene of ideology is also class-based. The secret behind the domination of one class of people over another is that they possess different ideas and concepts. The ideology of wolves creates wolves. The ideology of sheep creates sheep. The ideology of the rich creates rich people. And the ideology of the poor creates poor people. If you were born in America, you will be familiar with Christmas. If you were born in France, you will be familiar with Bastille Day. People are still people, but when they are implanted with different ideological genes, they will have different behaviors and ways of life. Once the ideology that people around you from childhood to adulthood consider to be correct has been deeply ingrained in your brain, even using sandpaper is difficult to erase. The deeper the ideology penetrates into your mind, the more it penetrates. Anything you would is right about the final thought will become your personal reality. It can even be the unconscious manifestation of the subconscious. As in the theory of psychologist Freud, human consciousness is formed later, and language and writing are the means to form it. So, the mother tongue, dialect, and speaking habits of a person often have the opposite influence on their inner thoughts. At the core, the difference between one person and another, and the difference in perception is due to genes. The thoughts, they inherit the thought genes of normal people and repeat the behavior of normal people. Then there will only be a normal life, and the result will not be any different. Want to have the right results first, you need to have the right behavior. Want to have the right behavior first, you need to have the right thoughts. What is the ren and due to veins of thought? It is the value, views, and perceptions deep in your subconscious. Please emphasize this. This does not mean that the people around you since childhood treat you badly. They just think they are conveying to you the right things. They are the people who love you like parents, teachers, people who always think they are doing the best for you because they have lived longer and think they have more experience than you. but they do not realize that they themselves are victims of ignorance about humanity and society, and they have no wisdom about human strategy. In short, from the moment you were born, you have begun to be educated from many sides, and you have perceived people and judged people based on the perceptions that have been implanted in your head. This is the process of forming an early understanding of people and your humanity. For more than 95% of people, most of the concepts that you accept come from Christian virtues, which have been propagated and continued for more than 2,000 years. So, I am not surprised that what I share causes so much reaction. Please review the comments on my content related to humanity. You will understand that Christian morality is like food that needs water to be delicious. I do not deny water, but if your mind has too much water now, you need to add some salt. So what is salt here? For the majority of people who only received Christian moral education, salt is humanism and the study of power. As mentioned above, real masters know how to cultivate many ideologies, and they also know how to flexibly convert these ideologies in different situations to rules of humanism that only a few people know. Below are the truths that only a few people know, and they can make you uncomfortable, but these are all truths, from childhood to adulthood. What you hear and see is actually just a play. In society, there are two sets of rules. One set is the rules of the day, and one set is the rules of the night. During the day, people say beautiful words and beautiful ideas, showing humanity and morality, and everyone shows themselves to be a gentleman. But when night falls, when no one sees anyone anymore, some people start doing things that cannot be exposed to the light. There are people who use the rules of the day just as a cover. When night falls, some people start acting silently, following the rules of the night, while others are deceived by those who always talk about morality and righteousness. They only know how to follow the rules of the day, and thus are poor all their lives. This class can dominate the other class because they hold secret thoughts and rules of the game that the other class does not know. One yin, one yang, one white, one black, creating a colorful world. And in society, two sets of rules correspond to two ideologies, yang, bright. White advocates that people are inherently good, widely known by the masses, based on Christian teachings, while realism is yin, dark, black, advocates that people are inherently selfish, understood by people in the upper class, inspired by thinkers like Machiavelli. These two ideologies are completely opposite, like the difference between the animals in nature, wolves and sheep, from childhood to adulthood. What you learn in school are all daytime rules. What people around you teach are Christian ideologies. It's not that they don't want to tell you about the rules of the night, but because they often don't know about its existence. Once again, I would like to emphasize that your thoughts are not your thoughts, but what has been planted by the people around you since you were a child. Your perception of humanity from the beginning is all formed by what the people around you and a living environment have taught you. Next, you need to understand the history of three major schools of thought: Christian morality, realism, and Stoicism. You may wonder why we have to go back in time and recount such a long history. Because to understand the truth about humanity, you need to understand the basic structure of the intellectual society that has existed for thousands of years. Without an objective view of history, it will be very difficult for you to understand the ideology that you have been taught for decades, and even more difficult to lift the curtain on the truth of humanity. The never disseminated secrets of the upper class are about to be revealed to you. Let's start with the most understandable explanation of the schools of thought of ancient Western civilization. I believe everyone knows that ancient philosophers are more outstanding than modern ones. This is a particularly strange thing. You see, if we talk about richness and nutritional value, ancient food is not as good as modern food. If we consider the complete knowledge system, ancient food is not as good as modern food. If we consider the level of brain evolution, ancient food is not as good as modern food. If we talk about the number of ancient people, there are only a few tens of millions of people. Modern people have billions of people. It can be said that under all conditions and factors, modern food is completely victorious over ancient food. But why are there more outstanding people in ancient times than modern people? Ancient people have Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Epicurus, Augustine, Hobbes, Machiavelli. Such outstanding people are countless, while in modern times, talented people are becoming less and less. Even the whole world is proposing to learn from the ancients to explain why modern people do not have as many outstanding people as ancient people. We will look at ancient Europe to get closer. The first step is to find the first clue, from ancient times to the present. Which period has the most outstanding people? I think everyone has guessed correctly. That is the period of the Roman Republic and the subsequent feudal wars. Why did outstanding people appear most in the Roman Republic and feudal wars period? The answer is because of conflict. When numerous city-states and kingdoms fought each other every day, each entity researched how to defeat the enemy, then used writing to record these methods. Didn't they become outstanding thoughts? Why were there many thinkers in ancient times? It was because of war. Why aren't there many thinkers in modern times? It's because we are living in a relatively peaceful era, in an era of war, to win. We need outstanding thinkers in an era of peace to develop. We need more high-tech talents. Next, we will talk about the Roman Republic and feudal wars period, an era of explosive thinking. How to apply the thoughts of these schools to our business. I know that not many people can clearly explain Christian morality, realism, Stoicism, and the schools that ruled the feudal system for thousands of years. I will use the simplest way to explain to make sure everyone understands. You can feel that there are many schools of thought in these schools. You don't know where to start to understand them. The reality is very simple. These schools are divided into only 3 major categories. You understand these 3 clearly, and everything else you will understand. At that time, the schools of thought had 3 main doctrines, and these 3 main doctrines had different attitudes towards tradition. The first main doctrine is to support tradition, believing that this tradition is really so good that it cannot be described. The second type is to abandon tradition. They believe that this tradition is really bad. The third type has an attitude of not caring. They can ask tradition, what kind of fish is it? Is it edible? Does it have anything to do with me? Is it good or bad? These 3 different attitudes correspond to Christian morality, realism, and Stoicism. The other schools you can think of as some variations of these 3 schools of thought, because attitudes towards tradition only have these 3 possibilities. We can rephrase these 3 attitudes in 3 clearer ways. The first attitude is to support tradition, also known as the restorationists. They believe that the reason humans ruin everything is because they have strayed from tradition. The measure today is that we must quickly return to tradition. This is the attitude of Christian morality, inspired by thinkers like Augustine. The second attitude is to abandon tradition, also known as opening up. Opening up is not happiness, but creating a new future. They believe that the reason why everything is ruined by humans is because humans have not abandoned those unpleasant traditions. The current measure is to try to create new rules. This is the attitude of realism. As seen in Machiavelli's works, both of these attitudes are positive and progressive in spirit. It's just that the solutions they offer are completely opposite because Christian morality and realism both originate from the European heartlands, where there is a large population and a complex order. If you don't use the spirit of entering the world, you won't be able to solve the problem. But in the vast lands of the Greek countryside or later monastic retreats, sparsely populated, with many mountains and rivers, a completely different attitude has appeared, which is the attitude of leaving the world. The first attitude is to restore the past, the second is to open up, and the third is to leave the world, which is not a form of leaving the world. Here, it means to escape from the mundane world. This is the attitude of Stoicism, inspired by Epicurus. The Stoics believe that the reason everything is ruined is because of too much thinking about participating in the mundane world. If you don't pursue these mundane achievements, you will immediately feel how vast this world is, whether the tradition is good or useful or not. Stoics believe that it doesn't matter. In fact, not only in ancient times do you see these 3 attitudes, but even today, when we face a problem, we often have the same 3 attitudes. Next, We will explain in more detail about these three schools. Let's talk about Christian morality. First, Augustine believed that this method of restoration means to restrain all kinds of impulses of oneself, work according to the requirements of the traditional virtues left behind like charity and humility so that you can achieve the highest thoughts of Christian morality. We all know that during the feudal wars, people fought very fiercely. It was also an era of collapsed order. Chivalry was chaotic. If you still follow these virtues, it will seem a bit rigid. So, at that time, Augustine went to the churches to market his moral products. The lords looked during the whole day of military campaigns. There was no time to practice virtues. So, at that time, Augustine and later, moralists could not find widespread acceptance. So, we can draw a basic conclusion that Christian morality is not effective in times of war, where black cats or white cats, whichever cat catches mice, is a good cat. Now let's look at the realists. The realists' point of view, inspired by Machiavelli, is these people are sick. Your Christian ideas are too old-fashioned. Everyone is fighting non-stop. Your ideas are clearly useless, and you still spread them all day. The times have completely changed. You don't see the changes of the times. You just have to follow the traditions of the past. You are basically a bunch of junk books that cannot succeed. Only know how to make this world chaotic. Everyone has heard the story of the prince who waits for power. It is from the work of Machiavelli, a representative character of the realists. Machiavelli meant that if you want to use ancient methods to manage modern times, it is basically stupid, like waiting for power to fall into your lap. So, what do the realists think should be done to get rich and strong? The country needs to use law and strategy to replace virtues. You see, in that era, pragmatic reform became popular in kingdoms. Any kingdom that reformed, that kingdom would become strong, like the reforms of Cesare Borgia or later European pragmatists. These realist figures emerged on the political stage of that era. To be able to implement strategy better, the king had to know how to use cunning to control people. These are the three treasures of the realists' magic world. That is law, power, and situation. The art of controlling people of the ruler began to be built from this era. Interestingly, the realists were often not welcomed in their own land, whether it was Borgia or later strategists. They were successful in other kingdoms because the ruler needed cunning advisors, and they did not have any base in the land, so they could obey orders. If the ruler used local realists, they would have some bases, and these people were too knowledgeable about the magic world, very easy to become the object that the ruler feared. Those who left their homeland, like a raft drifting alone, all their fame and wealth depended on the ruler, and the ruler liked especially those like that. So, the realists can only do great things in other kingdoms. You see, many companies, when they want to reform, will seek out outside consulting teams. Why? Because they are not afraid of offending others. They do not work in the company, do not need to face them every day. Next, let's talk about Stoicism. No matter what the moralists and realists think, from the perspective of the Stoics, who came from the Greek countryside, they think that the people of the European heartlands are too entangled in things that are not worth it. Stoics believe that there is only so much in this worldly life. It is not worth fighting for. This attitude of theirs is very otherworldly, clearly shown in the story of Epicurus. Epicurus had a friend named Diogenes, who was a prominent figure in Athens. When Epicurus passed by, someone visited Diogenes. Someone told Diogenes that Epicurus came here too. After hearing this, Diogenes was very worried and ordered his followers to chase Epicurus away throughout the city. For 3 days and nights, when he heard this news, Epicurus took the initiative to meet Diogenes and told him a story about a bird flying from one land to another on the way. If it wasn't a fine tree, it wouldn't stop to rest. If it wasn't the best fruit, it wouldn't eat. If it wasn't pure water, it wouldn't drink. As a result, on the way, it met a crow that had just picked up a piece of carrion. The crow saw the bird and immediately wanted to scare him away, afraid that the bird would take away his carrion. After telling the story, Epicurus looked at Diogenes and said, "Do you think I'm so greedy for your position in Athens?" Epicurus left. You must know that Diogenes is not an ordinary person. His ascetic lifestyle is famous. therefore. About Stoicism, we don't need to say anything more. The story is enough to show the stature and detachment of Stoicism. So, according to Stoicism, how to handle everything in the world well, another representative figure of Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, will ask you the opposite. What to do? The worst thing is people like you just want to do everything. You think that by being blind like that, you can make the world better, but in reality, the world is ruined because of people like you. Stoicism believes that the current solution is to ignore the idea of doing something, to let things happen naturally so that the world and people are free to operate, and everything will automatically get better. Look at nature. For thousands of years, no one has managed it. It is still good, right? This is the natural law of acceptance. But the governance of Stoicism, the governance of Europe and neighboring lands for thousands of years, is nothing more than the management based on these three walls: Christian morality, realism, and Stoicism. So, in business, how should we apply them? The first step, we need to understand how Christian morality, realism, and Stoicism were applied in historical dynasties. If we can understand how the European empires for thousands of years used the three schools, then we can apply them effectively in our business. In the Roman Republic and feudal wars period, there were numerous city-states and kingdoms fighting each other, in which major powers like Rome, Gaul, and Britannia all fought each other. We all know that, in the end, Julius Caesar defeated the other factions and completed the unification of Rome. Let's talk about the reason why Rome was able to unify its empire. In that era, the scale of war was very large for the rulers. Improving the war efficiency of the state became the most important strategy of the state. So, Christian morality, realism, Stoicism, which ideology can improve the war efficiency better? The ruler will choose to apply that ideology, no doubt. Realism has the most advantage in improving war efficiency. Christian morality is too conservative, while Stoicism pursues detachment. Realism, inspired by Machiavelli, told the rulers that the old ways are no longer useful. We need to change. To enrich the state, we must reform. Before reform in a kingdom, a person's social status is decided by their lineage, that is, the nobility of this generation. After another generation, still nobles. Poor people this generation, after another, still poor people. This cannot stimulate the desire to fight of people, especially cannot stimulate the desire of people of the lower class. So, the realists think this should be changed. Social status is decided by the number of victories you bring back from the war, and the lineage standard must be stepped aside. When this mechanism is applied, it has become very effective, stimulating people to compete to join the fight, and the effectiveness of war is improved significantly. When the realists put forward this logic, other kingdoms started to follow the reform model. Gaul was the first kingdom to implement reform. It was the famous reform of Vercingetorix's early strategies. Before the reform, Gaul was also very weak. After the reform, they immediately became a superpower, challenging Rome, which had not reformed at that time. Other kingdoms saw this situation, had no other way. They started to reform, and gradually Gaul's advantage was also lost. Gaul's weakness was not only due to external factors, but also due to internal betrayal, refusing to fully adopt the pragmatic approach. The reformer, perhaps a figure like Cassivellaunus, had no other choice but to align with Rome to work, and from there was the famous rise of Roman pragmatism. Rome applied the logic of realism to the extreme. Although Rome was the latest reformed power, they rose up and finally completed the unification. Here, you should understand why the debate between the schools eventually lost to the realists. But after Rome unified its empire, they continued to use the logic of realism. And after only a few decades, they faced decline. So what was the reason for this? The answer is very simple. Because Rome implemented pragmatic reforms with the main purpose of improving the effectiveness of war. To put it in a bad way, they relied on conquering other lands to support themselves. When Rome unified the empire, other lands were subdued. So who else did they conquer? And of course, the Senate still needed money to spend, and the nobles also needed their luxuries. In this situation, Rome had no choice but to exploit the people to support the empire. This is very easy to recognize, and such a regime certainly cannot last long without adaptation. So, the Roman Empire faced decline, followed by the rise of feudal lords after Rome's fall. After the fall of Rome, Charlemagne seized power in Western Europe. He divided the territory. This was a strategic act of Charlemagne. Everyone can imagine, when Charlemagne divided the lands, would there be warlords again? For the warlords, the logic of realism can be applied. Why? Because they can go and conquer other territories. The result, we all know, in the end. Charlemagne's successors once again consolidated power. So, bosses, remember, we can use realism logic to seize the world, but we absolutely cannot use realism logic to rule the world long term. This is what people often say, can quickly seize the world, but cannot quickly rule the world. After Charlemagne unified much of Europe, he was very clear, if he continued to follow the path of realism alone, he would eventually face rebellion. So, Charlemagne abandoned the pure realist ideology of conquest. He thought for a long time and finally chose the ideology of Stoicism. Everyone will definitely be surprised. Why did Charlemagne choose the ideology of Stoicism? I will analyze to help you understand. You see, Julius Caesar unified Rome. He was born into a powerful family, based on the accumulation of his ancestors. When he became ruler in this empire, who else dared to confront him? So, Caesar certainly dared to follow the path of the realists to fight. Let's look back at Charlemagne. We all know that before Charlemagne rose up, he was a warrior king. Charlemagne and a group of loyal lords fought to take over Europe. So, strictly speaking, Charlemagne and this group of lords were not in a superior and subordinate relationship, but a relationship like partners in front of Charlemagne's lords. There was no absolute power overpowering. So, we understand that Charlemagne chose acceptance, and the Stoic rule was really a choice without a choice. Furthermore, after Charlemagne became emperor, he also divided the empire's territory into regions. Let these partners look here. I know everyone surely will have questions. Why did Rome's division lead to collapse, and Charlemagne also divided the lords? But those lords did not overthrow him? We need to be a little clear. Charlemagne's division was only a temporary emergency, and due to the development of alliances and resources, this allowed Charlemagne to inherit the systems of Rome. For example, Roman laws once dictated strict taxation to prevent consolidation of power. There was also a regulation that feudal lands had to be fragmented, not allowing large clans to dominate. The purpose of these regulations was to break up society completely, dividing large factions into smaller units. Like that, the cost for these feudal lords to organize forces to fight back became very high. This was especially beneficial to the emperor's rule. So, the basic reason why Charlemagne's empire could last for a time is because they inherited many systems of Rome. This is called Carolingian continuity. So, bosses, when the power of your subordinates is growing, you need to disperse the power of those under them to divide their power. This is beneficial for your management. Charlemagne chose acceptance, which was just a reluctant choice in front of powerful partners. Indeed, after ascending the throne, Charlemagne spent years gradually consolidating control over the warlords who could threaten him. When the empire had just ended the wars, the people were exhausted and could not bear it. It was time to recover everything. He chose acceptance, which was the Stoic rule to rest with the people. Simply put, oh, everyone is tired. I will not be too strict anymore. You should rest well for a few decades. But even if you rest, you still have to work hard to develop the economy. Indeed, after a few decades, Europe entered a period of relative stability, often called the Carolingian Renaissance. Everyone discovered that in special periods, not governing at all became a better method of governing. When later rulers like Louis the Pious ascended the throne, we all know that he was a devout and strategic emperor in European history, and certainly, the Stoic method of acceptance did not fully suit him. So, Louis could only choose between Christian morality and realism to apply. We all know that the logic of realism was certainly not feasible long term, because if following realism alone we would face the same outcome as Rome's decline. So, the best choice was Christian morality. And from there came the famous period of Louis with the strengthening of the Church's influence. From then on, the basic form of the rule of European emperors for centuries was formed, which is what we often call the outer morality, inner realism, or yang morality, yin realism. What does this mean? In other words, the state propagated Christian morality to the people such as charity, humility, and obedience. The purpose was to make it convenient for the people to follow these virtues for the management of the empire. But in the specific system design, it still followed the logic of realism. Like that, for the emperor, using realism to manage the people is also effective. And using Christian morality to comfort the people also has a reason to achieve two goals at the same time. Listen to this. Bosses should have the answer then. Want to manage a team well? You need to pursue the external moral ideology, internal law. Outwardly use Christian morality, but the essence is to use the mechanism of realism. When you are in the startup stage, don't think about anything. Just use realism ideology. You see how Rome did it? Then you just follow in the startup stage. As long as you don't violate ethics and the law, collect money like crazy. In this period of strong development, there should not be too many rules and restrictions. Allow your team to freely develop each person's talent. As the saying goes, it doesn't matter if the cat is white or black. As long as it can catch mice, it is a good cat. Let the company exist first. If your company grows bigger and bigger, then you need to use the combination of morality and internal law. Think about it. If your company grows big with hundreds of thousands of people, if each person has their own ideas, then rebellion is not far away. There's a saying that a soldier who does not want to become a general is not a good soldier. But have you ever thought about it? If every soldier wants to become a general, then will that general be afraid when the company grows big? The system is very complete. What we need most is the ability of the team to execute, and the execution work does not require creativity. For example, the work at KFC is to process, the time to fry potatoes, the time to fry chicken wings, the temperature of the oil are all strictly controlled. Such work requires compliance without thinking. If each of your employees is very smart and has their own ideas, your execution ability will be significantly reduced. Using history as an example, we can know the rise and fall. From there, we can summarize 3 points to apply to business management. Number 1, in history, the only one that uses Stoic ideology is in the period of recovery post-war. Therefore, when doing business, business owners should not think about using Stoic ideology. Number 2, Christian morality is very important for the cohesion of a business because it can make employees obedient and very convenient for management. We can also understand morality as the corporate culture of the company. Number 3, realism determines the development of a business because when doing business, there are always competitors and enemies. Therefore, at any time, we must use realism. The final conclusion is that only external morality and internal law can truly make a business strong and powerful. It should be emphasized that between Christian morality, realism, and Stoicism, there is no ideology that is higher or lower. What is important is the suitability to the situation and the times. When you practice the right ideology at the right time and in the right conditions, that ideology will exert its maximum power. Christian morality believes that people are inherently good and focuses on social responsibility. Principles such as charity and humility effectively promote human beings to take responsibility for society and maintain harmony between individuals, family, and society. Realists believe that human nature is inherently selfish and emphasize results in the realist system. Strategies are designed to stimulate human potential, promote territorial expansion, and encourage people to make a career, while Stoicism promotes the idea of acceptance and natural law. It advises us to live in accordance with nature and take things lightly. Stoicism believes that we should imitate nature. All things operate according to the laws of the universe. Christian morality, realism, and Stoicism can be applied to different stages of life. Young people are suitable to study morality to complete the initial accumulation. Middle age should practice realism to achieve a breakthrough in career. When one retires, one should practice stoicism to fulfill the mission of letting go. A truly outstanding person is someone who can use both the nine and left sides. They will use Christian morality to deal with good people and realism to deal with bad people. Truly good people are half ambitious, half tolerant, choosing morality to achieve family happiness, realism to build a career, and stoicism to live peacefully in accordance with nature. A truly outstanding person is half saint and half strategist. Having both the compassion of a saint and the cunning of a ruler, they cannot lack any element. After going through a series of analyses, you may wonder if the above content has anything to do with human nature. Don't worry, I will reveal the truth about human nature that you have never known. Christian morality's ideology is like flower boxing. To quote, realism's ideology is like martial arts. Life is a battle, but you only know how to box and kick, while the rich learn martial arts. Below is the truth that only a few people know. Over the past 5,000 years, there have always been two systems of thought. One is based on the belief that human nature is good, according to Christian morality and the virtuous. One is based on the view that human nature is selfish, according to realism. Is Augustine's ideology completely correct when mentioning Augustine? Many people will think of him as a saint, and I also admit that Augustine's thoughts really have great points. But in today's era, many of Augustine's concepts are clearly no longer relevant. We learn from anyone, not blindly copying everything, but learning critically to take the good and discard the bad. So, what is the problem in Augustine's thoughts? The biggest problem is the confinement of human thinking in Augustine's thoughts. Women historically had limited rights under strict moral codes, were often not allowed to speak freely or pursue education widely. Augustine everywhere talks about virtues like obedience, dividing people into different ranks. The form does not go up to the nobles, the ceremony does not go down to the peasants. Offering means that those who are high-ranking who make mistakes do not need to be punished. Just being bound by virtues is enough, while for common people, there is no need to be treated with virtues. If common people make mistakes, they will be punished with punishment. He tries to protect the class system of feudal society, putting forth the theory of divine order to protect power. The ruler required the people to unconditionally obey all the rules of the monarchy. Even if the ruler was wrong, the subjects had to obey, otherwise they would be considered sinners. The people's thinking was closed, unable to think independently. The result was that feudal societies stagnated. The ruler was misguided, the people were ignorant. They were invaded and oppressed by rival powers. Augustine's ideology, the main result of education, was to make people more and more obedient, follow the rules, accept their lowly fate, and be submissive. Christian morality said that human nature is good. All of them talked about virtues and required each person to treat everyone around them in this way. That is what a gentleman or a lady is. But the reality is that those who believe that people are inherently good are eventually deceived by hypocrites. Those who believe in virtues and righteousness are eventually deceived by those who only talk about morality on the mouth. But the heart is false selfishness that hurts kindness, righteousness, morality. All these are just stylized moves that sound good, look beautiful, but are not practical. While the real masters are all people who appear stylized, but secretly practice martial arts. Moral ideology with colorful and pleasing stylized moves. The characteristic of moral ideology is to say beautiful words and forms, but are not useful in actual combat. This is exactly like the stylized moves of traditional martial arts. Most people are poor because their heads are full of moral ideology and are always bold in speaking good arguments, while the rich are rich because their heads are full of realist ideology. It sounds bad but is very useful in actual combat. When stylized moves and martial arts confront each other, what will happen? Surely many people have heard or seen information about the tragic match of a master of traditional karate. His name is John Smith, who fought an amateur MMA fighter. And there was a match in the ring between two people with a big difference in reputation and experience. Before the match, the referee repeatedly reminded John Smith to be gentle. However, less than 30 seconds after the match started, John Smith was knocked down 3 times by his opponent and finally fell down, unable to get up. Surprising the public, traditional martial arts with a history of centuries, before the confrontation with free martial arts without rules, failed so easily. Many people suspect that John Smith is a fake grandmaster. In my opinion, John Smith is somewhat bragging, but if he is really a fraud, he certainly cannot participate in this match. The truth is that any traditional martial arts cannot withstand free martial arts. This is not to look down on traditional martial arts, but traditional martial arts are built on specific rules, meaning that the opponent must follow a certain set of rules to strike, while the rules of free martial arts do not have any fixed strikes. The goal is to completely defeat the opponent. The tradition of not being able to win against freestyle martial arts is an inevitable result of moves that do not fit the rules of the modern arena. The poor put all their strength into overcoming the enemy is because their thinking does not fit the rules of the rich society. Many people have their heads filled with morality that has been passed down for centuries. With its lofty rules, the N-style moves seem good and seem beautiful. Those reasons in ancient times actually made sense, because everyone followed the usual rules to strike just stop at a sufficient level. As long as you are a noble, you will have a high position in society, but the rules of today's era have changed. When you appear on the freestyle arena, it doesn't matter if you are a noble or not. As long as you have money and power, you are already a noble. No one follows the rules of the nobles to strike anymore, so it is inevitable that you will be defeated immediately. Realist ideology is similar to freestyle martial arts, with typical representatives such as Machiavelli and Hobbes. Machiavelli believes that the relationship between freestyle martial arts and traditional martial arts is similar to martial arts. The basic relationship between people is based on interests only. He said that as long as there are interests, no matter how distant the relationship is, it can become close. But once interests are damaged, even father and son can become enemies. Men who are 50 years old still have desires, while their wives start to lose their beauty after the age of 30. So if the husband has the opportunity, he will definitely find someone new. Do you think that trust can be relied upon? In his opinion, there is no man who does not have desires. If there are, it is only because they do not have enough capital to desire. Hobbes also believes that in ancient times, there was no true loyalty between the king and his subjects. They often calculated each other. Morality and humanity are just empty words, but interests are the truth behind everything. Morality is only effective when there is no conflict of interests. As long as there is a conflict of interests, morality will become useless. When in love, morality can be effective, but after marriage, when husband and wife have a conflict of interests, if you continue to follow the morality only know how to be good to the other party and give all your money to them, you will be vulnerable. When your children are young, you can follow the morality, but when your children grow up and you get old, if you continue to follow the morality and share your assets, you will be very miserable. When you come back to pretend to use benefits, to force others to treat you right, that is true morality. Just hope others treat you right, but cannot bring any benefits to them. That is just fake morality. Morality is an idealized dream, and realism is the path to that dream. Otherwise, everything is just empty words. What you hear and see is a joke. This world is made up of two systems of order. The first system is justice, morality, etiquette. The second system is the war of interests hidden behind the first system. The morality of the first system is just the form. The benefits of the second system are the substance. The knowledge we are exposed to from childhood to adulthood are mostly formal rules of the first system. People always calculate benefits in their hearts. That is the benefit rule of the second system. Good people are those who use the first system as a means to achieve the goal of the second system. Almost everyone puts on a shiny moral coat and then finds every way to benefit themselves. The moral rule is what everyone says out loud. The benefit rule is what everyone remembers in their hearts. So, never let the first system fool you. but use the second system to see through things. For example, we cannot just look at what a person says but must look at what they do. The first system is just a trap. You cannot consider it as a method to settle down and become successful and famous. If you want to understand each person's behavior, you need to analyze based on the second system, that is, the benefit analysis method. New benefits are the main reason that leads to human activities, and the benefit analysis method will never be outdated. For example, there was an incident that happened around me. Once, I and Mr. James went to a resort in the Alps. Because we had a lot of luggage and were not familiar with the local area, in the hotel lobby, Mr. James secretly gave the waiter a €50 tip to help him carry his luggage. After that, in the following days, that waiter was very enthusiastic with us. Everything from the travel schedule to the luggage was arranged perfectly done. After returning, he mentioned this case in a lecture and told the students that if you want to receive help from a friend, you must first understand what you can provide for them. Besides benefits, there are no other relationships that arise between people. Money is the best way to express it. €50 is not much, but it is much more useful than saying sweet words or trying to please someone artificially. That is the method of value exchange. Every time you encounter an incident, you need to quickly divide it into different parties of interest. Each of your actions will hurt whose interests increase, whose interests those who benefit increase. Are your friends? Those who lose benefits are your enemies. You need to differentiate between friends and enemies that way. There are no permanent friends, only permanent benefits. When benefits change, your enemies and friends will also change quickly. Similarly, in a company, every decision made needs to be analyzed to see whose benefits the decision is in line with and whose benefits are hurt. Those parties with suitable benefits will certainly form a community of shared benefits, and those parties whose benefits are hurt will certainly form an alliance. However, those two factions will certainly hold up the moral flag of the first system to fight for the benefit of the second system. This is the truth, just that you didn't know before. The fact that you don't know the truth doesn't mean the truth doesn't exist. Come on. As the dominant educational ideology of the people that has dominated for centuries of history, this ideology has been so ingrained in the minds of the people that you have had to read and memorize it since you were a child. The knowledge you approach is mostly about justice, morality, etiquette, truth, goodness, and beauty. You are taught that people are inherently good, grateful, loyal, and have noble qualities. In your childhood, most of the relationships around you are truly pure and innocent, such as the feelings between teachers and students, your classmates, or first love. But there is one thing you need to realize when you are young. These relationships are almost unrelated to major conflicts of interest. That environment is like a glass cage world, where the powerful ideology that people are inherently good also proves to be effective. However, when you enter society, relationships begin to involve interests and become more realistic. At that time, you will see that human behavior is completely opposite to what you used to know. You may encounter friends who borrow money and don't pay it back. Your lover betrays your partner. Your colleague stabs you in the back. Even siblings fight over property without caring about their parents. These behaviors are completely opposite to the concept of humanity being inherently good that you have been taught since you were young. Your perception of human character begins to waver, and you fall into the misery of not being able to do good without getting hurt. The reality of society is a bloody jungle world, where the strong win, the weak lose. It is the only unchangeable rule. Behind everything is the struggle for human benefit. In the end, humans are just animals in clothes. Human interaction is basically testing each other's strength and limits to decide how to deal with it. People fear the strong and bully the weak. It is the nature of humanity. Under the attraction of money, interests, and power, even family love or friendship can become unreliable. Survival is a life and death battle. If you only use flower boxing and kicking while the leader uses free martial arts, then your outcome in the confrontation will be extremely disastrous, at least full of injuries. In the worst case, your body will be broken. As mentioned before, this world operates according to two sets of rules. The first rule is about justice, righteousness, morality, etiquette, truthfulness, goodness, beauty. The second rule is about the struggle for benefits, the benefits hidden behind the first rule of morality and emotion are just superficial, while the second rule of interest is the true nature. Since childhood, you have been exposed mainly to superficial rules, while the leaders of society always calculate the rules of interest in their minds. They often talk about morality and emotion just to hide the real benefits they are aiming for. They put on the beautiful coat of morality and emotion, but secretly seek benefits for themselves. If you still don't understand the wind, I will speak more frankly. For more than 90% of ordinary people who have been influenced by moral education for centuries, morality and emotion have almost become a curse that they can hardly overcome for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, for experts and hypocrites, morality and emotion are just tools and means for them to dominate others. The way to break the bonds of morality and emotion will be decoded by me. In the next part, remember to watch. The reason why most people are still poor is because their minds are full of moral thoughts, only knowing how to talk about good virtues, while the rich have in their minds the realist ideology. Although it sounds unpleasant, it is extremely effective in reality. The master sees people only based on benefits. Just one look is enough to see through the confusion of morality and fake emotions, while the weak are always bound by vain things, like feelings, love, friendship, things that cannot be relied on. Remember, this does not mean you should not value morality and emotions, but you should not let them become your burden. The reason why the poor are still poor is because it is the inevitable result when a person's thinking does not adapt to social rules. The truth that helps the world operate lies in the second set of rules. The first set of rules is just like politeness between two people. Sometimes when talking to someone, you know that you are saying meaningless words, and you also know that the other person is saying false words. Both understand that. They are exchanging polite words, but still say them with a serious look. This is the formation of the first set of rules. Of course, no matter how society develops, it needs to respect the first set of rules as a standard considered orthodox. This helps people not look too pragmatic, although the truth is even more pragmatic than reality, because beautiful things, hope, and positive energy can promote better progress from the outside. Machiavelli lived at a time of great turmoil. Although he possessed earth-shattering talent, he still could not be widely spread like Augustine. The reason is because his theory belongs to the second set of rules. It is only suitable for silent use, not suitable for public use. Understanding but not saying it is referring to the second set of rules. It can be used, but absolutely should not be said. Those who benefit from it will not say it. This is a metaphor in the study of human nature, looking at human nature from a reverse perspective. Today, the social management structure with the form of morality in the law has been used for centuries and is still maintained to this day. The veil covering the truth about human nature is gradually being revealed. You need to clearly perceive a concept. What the emperor learned and what the people learned are completely opposite. This must be repeated 3 times because of its importance if you want to understand humanity, decode humanity, and grasp humanity. You must follow 2 principles. Number 1, dialectically reconsider the ideas you once thought were right. Number 2, start accepting, or at least not eliminating, the ideas you once thought were wrong. I need to emphasize that paradoxical ideas are not bad. Ideas like a knife. Criminals use knives to kill people. Doctors use knives to save people. One thought becomes a saint. One thought becomes a demon. You cannot say the knife is flawed. Knives have no good or evil. Its good or evil depends on the values of the user. Similarly, humanity is just a tool without good or evil. Understand humanity, follow humanity, and grasp humanity. It will become a tool to help you advance. But if you oppose, criticize, or complain about humanity, it will become a shackle that hinders your development. I beg to reiterate once again, understanding the dark side of humanity is to move towards its light. Seeing the evil of humanity is to maintain one's own goodness. So, before officially entering the unpredictable world of humanity, you must solve a prerequisite problem, which is to reset your honest thinking. If you do not reset your thinking, you will see that what is related to humanity will be difficult to understand. and difficult to accept if you do not reset your thinking. You will see that things related to humanity will be difficult to understand and difficult to accept if you do not reset your thinking. You will feel incomprehensible and extremely uncomfortable. You will not be able to absorb more than 1% of knowledge about humanity. About humanity, the things you like are not the things you really need, and the things you do not like are the things you lack and need. The most frightening poverty is not the lack of material things, but the thinking and perception that fall into poverty. Material poverty can only be poor for a while, but if your thinking and perception are poor, it can last for 3 generations. You do not need to leave a huge fortune to the next generation. Just leave your children and grandchildren a vision, a mindset, and accept that it is already a family. Poor talent in thinking and awareness is a form of legacy whether children want it or not. They are still engraved in their lives. On the contrary, rich thinking and awareness is also a form of legacy. As long as you consciously transmit it, it will follow your children for life. This is the most valuable asset. You can leave them more valuable than savings, real estate, bonds, or gold. But if you are ignorant about humanity, what will you pass on to your children? Is it ignorance?